So this was our situation. We said it's actually the table that's on the right there. So which of these graphs is accurate and why? And I'm going to go ahead and label these things so we can talk about them. Got graph 1, graph 2, and graph 3. Which one do you think is accurate and why? I see that most of us are saying that it's actually graph number 3. So why do you believe that this carpet situation, that we're talking about is actually graph number 3 there? Why do you think it would look like that? Or why wouldn't it look like the other ones? I'll take an argument either way.
One on the left, but now that I think about it, the one on the right would make more sense, because if we have to purchase the first 100 square yards of carpet first, we wouldn't see a jump in the price then, because the price per square yard wouldn't change for that first 100. It would stay the same. So the difference would be, instead of seeing a jump, our slope would change of our line.
So you're saying we're not going to see a jump discontinuity. We're just going to see a slope change. Kind of like what we see right here. So you're saying we just kind of see this change in slope where all of a sudden it was doing one thing and now it's kind of doing something else. And I'm trying to exaggerate it a little bit there so you can see all of a sudden that kind of sharp point bend, and maybe I could exaggerate it even more, and it's not really, I'm not tracing over the graph there, but I'm trying to show what you're highlighting. I agree with Dan's argument. I disagree with Dan's argument. Cool. So what would have, this graph over here, number 1, that has a jump discontinuity. What would that have meant for us? If the graph had actually looked like that, what would that have meant in terms of this situation?
I think it would mean that the table would show, like the first one that we looked at, the one on the left. So it would show that, like, all of the square yards would be multiplied by 7, and just starting at 100 instead of adding in the first 100.
So you're saying that this piece right here would show that everything is $7 a yard, not just after the 100 yards.
Yeah.
So you're saying that matches up with our first table. Thoughts on that? Agree with Mia, disagree with Mia? All right, so the question then becomes, when you look at the 4 tables the 4 equations down below, which of these graphs do you agree with? Functions. Which of these functions do you agree with? Which of these functions do you disagree with? And why? Okay? And I'll go ahead and number them so we can actually see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can actually see those now, correct? Bonus. I actually learned this lesson last spring. I just forgot it. Which of these functions do you agree with? Which of these functions do you agree with? Ooh, I see lots of 3s. So the question becomes, why does 3 make sense, right? Why does function 3 make sense? And Dan, I'm going to tap into you at the end. Where did Dan go? Is Dan still here? I don't see Dan.
I'm here.
Oh, that's weird. Is your video off? Is that why?
No, it's on.
Huh. That's weird. All right. Oh, you're right there. I'm going to tap into you at the end because I really liked your graphical interpretation, and I want to come back to that one because I think that's a really cool way to see it. But other people, thoughts on why we think function 3 fits? We've heard a lot from ISIS. she could have just unmuted. Drew, you can just unmute. You haven't even talked today, man.
Okay, I'll go. So I originally had number 4, but my group talked about how if, for example, like if you plug in, for number 3, if you plug in 125 where x is, it would be 125 minus 100, so it gets rid of the first 100, and then it's just
So you're saying
times 25 plus 1,000, and then you get your answer for.
So you're saying if x was 125, this right here kind of gets rid of the first 100. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
And then, so we're only paying $7, that $7, we're only paying that on the extra 25. And it kind of got glitchy. Could you explain to me why this 1,000 is there then?
Because that is the first 100 carpets.
So you're saying that the green stuff is figuring out the extra, and the 1,000 is really figuring out what we had originally. I agree with his thinking, and that's kind of how I thought about it. I disagree. Cool. So for me, a lot of times when I'm trying to create functions, it becomes a really big pain. So what I like to do is I like to do what Drew was just doing there, and I like to talk about simple examples. Like what if I was really thinking about 125 yards? How would I have figured out that cost? And then off on the side, I'll kind of write down what I'm doing. I would have been like, okay, well, I have 100 times 10, because the first 100 are $10. And then I'm going to have 25 times 7, I call this my process column, and it helps me. And then maybe I would kind of switch colors and also switch examples, and I might talk about that one. And I might say, well, that's really 100 times 10 plus 50 times 7. And then I would start to ask myself, okay, well, where are those numbers coming from? Specifically, I don't understand where that, where am I getting that number from? Where am I getting the 25? And in this way, we can start to see what Drew just talked to us about. That's why we're subtracting that 100. It gets rid of the first 100 yards. Questions here? All right, Dan viewed this in a very different way. I thought it was really interesting. So Dan, why don't you kind of talk us through how you saw this?
I thought of it more as where we want our line to start. So for number 4, the one on the far right, I thought it was close, but it wasn't exactly where we wanted it to be. When we shift it up 1,000, so what it would look like is our y-intercept would be 1,000, but we want that to be shifted to the right to where after the first 100 square yards of carpet are bought.
Can you slow down just for a second so I can kind of catch up with you?
Yeah.
So you're saying, like, if we had just looked at 7x, 7x would have looked maybe like this.
It would have been shifted up 1,000.
Okay, so that was just if we had y equals 7x.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, like, if we now had y equals 7x plus 1,000, you're saying all of a sudden it would be shifted up by 1,000.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
So we have to put that start spot, that y-intercept, after our first 100 carpets are bought. So when we subtract 100 from x, it shifts our graph over right 100.
And so you're saying that's why we get this piece over here that's shifted at a right 100 and has that value of 1,000.
Yeah.
I see his thought. I don't see his thought. That's really cool. So you're saying we don't even have to just view this from the perspective of what's going on in the situation, but we can really think about this as graphical modification. If we understand what the graph is supposed to look like, up in here, we can really just take that line and kind of move it around to where we want it to start almost, which is super interesting. Did anybody else think about it that way besides Dan when you were kind of looking at it? See, if we were not remote, that'd be so cup-worthy, wouldn't it? That's an amazing thought and amazing way to view it.
In the equalities part, things that needed to be changed.
So you're questioning, and I just started recording again. You're questioning this middle one and saying, is it completely correct, or is there something that we need to fix, specifically with the inequalities? So what do you think needs to be fixed with the inequalities?
Well, I think that in the first inequality, it should be x is less than or equal to 100. And then in the second one, I think that it should be x is less than positive infinity.
Oh, so you're saying maybe put infinity here.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could just get rid of that altogether?
I mean, yeah.
Right? So either way, you're saying we do have some modifications with that middle one to make, which is a really good thought. And so we would see this graph because before we had that, before ISIS changed that right there, what would we have seen right here before ISIS made that modification? Kind of show me with your hands. I think you can show me with your hands. It's interesting. What would we have seen right here on the graph, right at 100 when x is 100? What would we have seen on the graph? Come on, try to show me with hands. Ryan, you got to go a little higher, up by your face. I couldn't see it. Yeah, look at Ranger, everybody. Ranger, do it again. Okay, if you can't see Ranger, Ranger's saying like we would see this. Okay? So we would see kind of this open circle there because we're not actually including it anywhere. So it doesn't exist. And we call that actually a hole, by the way. That's kind of foreshadowing. All of a sudden, when a point is just not there, it's called a hole because it looks like a hole. And that makes sense.